Hey everybody, Ryan here at etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Roadmaster Smart Diode wiring kit for towed vehicles on our 2021 Chevrolet Spark. So before we kind of dive in too deep and check out the wiring, why don't we kind of refresh ourselves on the main components that we're going to need to flat tow our Spark down the road. So you're going to have a total of 5 main components needed to flat tow your Spark down the road. The first one's going to be your base plate. That's going to provide us with a solid and reliable connection point. That way we can hook our tow bar up to it. The tow bar is going to be that second component, all right, and that's going to be the physical link that connects the front of your Spark to the back of your motorhome. Third main component is going to be safety cables, and these are there in the event of an unlikely disconnect. They're going to keep everything paired together. The fourth main component is going to be tow bar wiring. And what that's going to do is transfer the lighting signals from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Chevy, keeping you safe and legal. And last but not least, the fifth main component is going to be a braking system. And what this is going to do is apply the brakes in your Spark whenever you apply the brakes in your motorhome, helping to bring you to a more complete and predictable stop. There are a couple more components that I would suggest picking up. It's just going to make your flat towing experience that much better. One of them is what's called a automatic battery disconnect. Since the Spark requires you to disconnect the battery whenever you're flat towing, that can be kind of troublesome having to get your tools out and do that every time. With the automatic switch, all you're gonna have to do is push a button. Makes it super easy and straightforward. The other one is a what's called a stoplight switch. Since the battery is disconnected, does not have power when you're flat towing, your factory brake light switch is not going to work properly, okay? And many different braking systems, the majority of the permanent style ones, need a signal from that. And if that's your case, using the stoplight switch is going to provide that signal to our braking systems, and everything's going to flow and work correctly. So this is a great example on how the wiring kit's going to work. We have our left turn signal going on the motorhome, and it's going to transfer it back here to our Spark. The same is going to hold true for our right turn signal, our tail lights, and our brake lights. And because of that, people are going to know what our intentions are as we're going down the road. So honestly, I think for this vehicle, the smart diodes are the way to go. Once you have them installed, you're not even going to notice that they're there, and they're going to be super easy to hook up. All you're going to have to do is more or less plug them in. Now, the reason that you're going to need a smart diode is because on these particular vehicles, the lighting functions that run through the factory wiring are all going to be controlled by one wire. All right, so it's variable voltage. And because of that, the smart diode is going to recognize that and allow everything to work the way it should. The good news is with the smart diodes, there's only one, so you're going to have to only tap into one wire. They're nice and small, and they're very reliable. We haven't had really any issues at all with them. One of the other wiring options that you can use, it's relatively popular with these vehicles, is what's called a bulb and socket. Those work great. They are isolated completely from the factory wiring, but the one issue with those is the fact that you are going to have to drill a hole in your taillight and put that bulb in there. And a lot of times that can cause issues, you know, leaks, things like that. It's really a pain to get them changed because they will burn out sooner or later. And not to mention, you know, if you misdrill or crack your taillight or something like that, you're going to have to get a whole new replacement. So smart diodes are just a little more of a safe bet. So I mentioned how easy it is to hook up, and all you're going to have to do is take your plug and push it right into the connector there. And that's really all there is to it. Because honestly, who wants to mess around, take a ton of time trying to set things up whenever you're trying to enjoy yourself. So this really helps speed things up. Now, there is 2 different kits available. All right, so this particular kit does not come included with the plug or your wire here that runs through the tow bar. And so this would be a great choice for those of you that already have those components, or like in our customer's case today, some of the higher end tow bars, like this Roadmaster Nighthawk here, actually comes included with this cable and the connector. So don't make no sense to purchase a kit that does come with these, because then you'd have 2. If your tow bar does not come with the cable and the connector, or you need those components. The good news is that there is actually a kit that does come with those. So if that's your case, I would definitely suggest picking that one up. So at the end of the day, you know, you can't really go wrong with a setup like this. It's reliable, has a clean appearance. You know, you don't really have to modify any parts on your vehicle, and it's very straightforward as far as, you know, setting it up goes. As far as the installation, really not too bad. Not really too complicated. It is just a little time consuming having to route all your wires and things like that, but as long as you stay focused, shouldn't really give you any issues. Speaking of which, let's go ahead, pull into the garage and hook it up together now. To begin your installation, you're going to be here at the front of your vehicle. Now we have our fascia removed because we're doing this at the same time that we're doing our base plate, and that's what I would highly recommend. This can be done with it put back together though, it just makes it a little more tricky and time consuming. That said, you're going to grab one end of your wiring kit, take a rubber dust boot there, just slide that over, kind of out of the way for now, and then we're going to separate the individual wires so you can kind of just trim them back a little bit and peel them apart. Pull back a few inches there. And what I like to do is just kind of cut a little bit off the end to kind of give us a fresh start there. Then we're going to strip each wire back to expose the bare wire underneath that insulation. Give them a good twist. That way when we hook them up, we know that they'll make a good connection. So I'll do that same thing for these remaining wires. Now if you grab the plug, we can get this hooked up. The way it's going to work is each terminal is going to have a set screw, and you want to back that screw out enough to get the wire in there, but not try to take the screw all the way out because it's kind of tricky to get back in. But if you look at it, they're going to be labeled. This one's TM for tail light, so the brown wire will go to it. GD for ground, so the white wire will go there. LT for left turn, so our yellow wire will go to that one. And RT for right turn, so the green wire will go there. So with that said, we'll grab the appropriate wires, put them in the correct terminal, and just tighten down that set screw. We'll do the same thing for the remainder of our wires. So here's what the wiring looks like once it's all hooked up. Now I do want to mention, since I'm installing the Roadmaster InvisiBrake supplemental braking system, that does require another wire to get hooked up to the back of the 6-way for an indicator light, and that's that black one there. So if you have that braking system, yours will look like this. If not, you know, just ignore this black wire. With that being said, can put our dust cover back on, and what I like to do is before we put any dielectric grease or seal this up really well, I like to make sure everything works and come back at the very end to do that. What I'll do is get that cap on, and for the time being, we can come over here to our base plate where we have a bracket, and we can just mount this up. Now what I've done is started to route our wiring because we're going to have to run it back to the rear of our vehicle, hook it up to our taillights. And what I did is took the wiring, ran it just up along through here, kind of looped it around, came kind of underneath of our taillight, or the headlight, excuse me, right up through there, where it comes into the engine compartment. And I kind of just looped it around there, along through there, and dropped it straight down along our firewall to the underside of our vehicle. Underneath of our vehicle now, here's where our wiring came down, and I just routed it along these brake lines, kind of more over here towards the passenger side of our vehicle. I dropped it right down through here, and once we get to this point, we need to ground our white wire. And I'm going to do it right here on our frame. So I kind of just eyeball the length that we're going to need. And you want to very carefully just cut the white wire. All right, and you kind of peel it back from the rest of the harness. You want to focus on this end here. This is the end that goes up to our 6-way plug. All right, so we're going to take it, strip back the insulation, take one of the included ring terminals, I'm going to slide that over and crimp it down. At this point, we can grab the provided self-tapping screw and fasten this ring terminal to our frame rail. Once that's nice and tight, the rest of the wire, the rest of the white wire, that goes to nothing. You're just going to want to separate that from the rest of the harness. And then you want to hold on to that wire because we're probably going to use it here a little bit later on. So I continue to route our wiring, and when you're doing this, you want to try your best to avoid any hotter moving parts, so you can use some of the zip ties to keep everything secure. But I simply just followed our factory brake lines. It's up and out of the way in a good spot. Right here, I just kind of routed it, up alongside of our fuel tank. Right there. And up through here. Now at this point, I separated our green wire from the yellow and brown. And what I did is push it through that hole. I also pushed the yellow and brown wire through this little factory hole. The green wire is going to stay over here on the passenger side. And at this point, I also grabbed our length of white wire. I just kind of connected it to the green wire, just, twisted them together more or less. All right, we kind of just let that hang. And then our white wire, the yellow and brown wire, we have to run over to the driver's side. So if you look up behind our fascia, you'll see our bumper beam up there. And I kind of just routed it along through there. And kind of just let all of our wires hang for now. That way we can go up top, get our tail lights removed, and get everything routed into place. Now if we come up top here and open up our hatch, we can get our tail lights removed. We're going to have 2 Phillips head screws that we can pull out. Just grab the light and kind of wiggle it around. A lot of times these can be in there pretty tight. Once we get it to release, so we can then remove our bulbs. So these are all quarter turns. Just kind of rotate them a quarter of a turn. We'll then set our light off to the side and repeat the same process for the passenger side of our vehicle. Now we can get our wires from underneath pulled up. I'm just going to use a fish wire, so it's just a thick piece of wire I had laying around. You can always use a coat hanger, a piece of tubing, something like that. And we'll simply just pull these into position. And then I'll kind of cut off some of that extra wire. We don't need this much extra. I like to give us a little bit to work with. So we'll go about there. And then I'm going to strip back the ends of the insulation. Get the yellow and brown wire split apart. Get these twisted, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side of our vehicle. Now what we can do with this brown wire, we're going to go back here towards the tail light pocket a little bit. We're going to cut that. All right, we're going to strip back this end, so we're going to have this small jumper. as well as this end. All right. And what you're going to do with that in there is you're going to take your white wire and twist it around there. That way, this white wire is going to receive the taillight signal from this brown wire here and be able to transfer it over to the passenger side of our vehicle. That said, we'll grab the butt connector, crimp that down on there. We'll take that other length of brown wire and get it hooked up. Since this end is relatively large, what I like to do is just kind of double that wire back over to make it a little thicker. Put that in the butt connector and crimp it down. Now with these two ends, we're going to take the included spade terminals, slide those over, and get these crimped down. So now we can tap into our factory wiring, okay? And I went ahead and tested it, and we're going to be using this bulb here that has the red and black wire. The red wire is one that we're going to be using. This is going to not only be the tail light signal, but also the brake light signal. And what we're going to do, we're going to cut that wire in half, get both the ends stripped back. And on each end, we're going to connect one of these spade terminals, just like we did with some of those other wires. So once we have this part done, we can grab our diode, all right? And there's going to be several labels on it. Car brake in would be this wire here, our factory brake signal. So that's going to plug on. Car brake out would be the other end of the wire. It's closest to our bulb there. So that'll just plug in. The RV brake, that's going to be our yellow wire. So that's going to control, our stop and turn signal. So that'll get plugged in there. RV tail will be the brown wire. So I'll get plugged in there, and we're going to have one last one, and that's going to be for ground. So the kit comes included with this little length of white wire, and I prepared it simply by just crimping on spade terminal and one of the included ring terminals on the other end. That's going to get plugged on like so, and what I think I'm going to do is actually grab our tail light, kind of put the bulbs back in and just kind of eyeball everything to see where a good spot would be to ground this out, because this is going to have to get connected somewhere here in the tail light pocket or something like that. So I kind of held her light up and found a good spot, and somewhere in this place here will be a good area to ground out that ring terminal. So use a provided screw, run that. So with everything hooked up over here, I went ahead and plugged all of her bulbs back in to the back of her tail light. And then it's pretty tight in here. So we're just going to kind of carefully line our light back up and re-secure it. So over here on the passenger side, I got everything hooked up essentially the same exact way that we did the other side. So the factory red wire there, you're going to put the car brake in on this side, car brake out, side close to the bulb. We have our same ground wire set up. Our RV tail, the white wire is going to get plugged into there. The RV brake, green wire is going to get plugged into there. With that all done, again, you can take your tail light and reinstall it the opposite way that we removed it. Now it's a good idea to test our wiring to make sure that it is hooked up properly. So go ahead and hook it up and we can try out our taillights, our left turn signal, our right turn signal, and our brake lights. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Smart Diode wiring kit for towed vehicles on our 2021 Chevy Spark.